Hi guys, my name is Brant, and today we're going to be in James chapter 3. I don't know about you guys, but I have always wanted more wisdom, and I don't think I'm alone. In fact, I think most of the world has either sought wisdom or sought wisdom from somebody else so that they could have their questions answered. And for me, one person to look at for wisdom is clearly King Solomon, known to be the wisest man in the entire history of the world. People would come hundreds of miles just to see his wisdom, and one of those people were Queen Sheba. And when she saw quite how wise Solomon was, she paid him. And I don't know about you guys, but I would love to be getting paid for wisdom, but that's not happening right now. We move a little forward to Aristotle, who is one of the greatest philosophers who's ever lived. Just knew so much from all the way from economics all the way to poetry. Just a bright mind, a wise guy. We can move forward to Michelangelo, who is one of the smartest mans to ever live during the Renaissance period. With his wisdom, he was able to make all kinds of inventions, and he was able to study all kinds of things and just had a vast knowledge of just about anything you wanted to know. He was a wise person. From a young age, I'm sure that you guys have heard phrases, be wise with your money, be wise with your time. Benjamin Franklin even sold 10,000 copies of a Poor Richard's Almanac, which was just full of small pieces of wisdom that people could use to kind of incorporate into their days so that they might be a little more wise. If you're anything like me, you've put a wise phrase in your Twitter bio or your Instagram bio so that somebody might think that you are a little wiser than you might actually be. People value wisdom, and people want to be perceived as wise. Maybe as a parent, you want your kid to think that you are wiser than you might actually be, but you also want them to grow up to be wise. As a student, you may want to be seen as wiser than your other classmates in order to get a competitive edge when maybe looking for a job. As a coworker included, you might want to be getting wise to have a higher opportunity to get more range in the company, to look after more of it, and through that wisdom prosper and get raises and everything that comes with that. Well, this pursuit of wisdom hasn't always led to great things. In fact, if we look to Genesis 3, we see the earliest encounter of somebody seeking wisdom that they shouldn't have. Adam and Eve ate from the tree of good and evil behind God's back because they wanted more wisdom that they thought that they could handle. Well, so is wisdom a bad thing? By no means. Of course, we know that wisdom isn't a bad thing if it's the right type of wisdom. So you might be asking, Brant, what is the right type of wisdom? Well, I'm glad you asked, and we are going to jump into James 3:13 to figure out that answer. James says, "Who is wise and understanding among you?" James is talking to some Jewish people right now, and I'm sure that they have grown up their entire lives studying the Bible. And so they, in their minds, probably thought that they were pretty wise. So I imagine some hands shot up. If they even did that during that time, I don't know. I imagine they did. But what James says, he's got him here, first of all. James has the hook, line, and sinker set. He continues by saying, "By his good conduct, let him show his works and the meekness of wisdom." James, the meekness of wisdom, that doesn't seem to go together. And I'm sure they thought the same thing. I'm sure that they looked at the Pharisees and their teachers and thought, well, I don't remember the last time that these guys were really meek. They all seem to be wanting to show that they're the best. And honestly, I'm thinking the same thing. James, when was the last time I've seen a CEO or a politician that have claimed to be wise show that they were meek? It almost seems like the claim to be wise is to go against that very thing. It's not very humble of you. Well, James is going to continue here. He's going to say, "But if you have bitter jealousy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast and be false to the truth." Guys, those hands that I mentioned earlier, they're going down. And James knows what they're thinking. As I said, these were Jewish people, and James was the father of Jerusalem at the time. he kind of ran the place almost in the religious sense. And I'm sure that he grew up with some of these people in Bible study, remembering the kid to the left of him saying, man, I really want to be like Samson when he did that whole riddle thing. He really fooled those Philistines. I want to fool my enemies. I want to be so wise my enemies don't know what's coming. He's probably had dinner with some of these people, and he remembers the laughter around the table, the stories of when the Jewish people would cheat the Romans out of some money. He'd be laughing and say, I can't believe I did it today. This Roman, he gave me his money, and I left him with his foolishness. He's got nothing. I'm sure he remembers the stories of the Pharisees who couldn't handle not being wiser than Jesus. When Jesus showed him up, they went so far as to crucify him, to kill him. And that's what wisdom kind of does. And I gotta say, I've fallen into this category before. Coming to Ozark, I wanted to be kind of have this reputation of being wise or smart or whatever you want to call it, but I didn't make many friends that way. I saw everybody as a competitor, and I wanted to be better and wiser than everybody. If somebody had a right answer that I didn't have, I kind of resented them. If somebody tried to give me advice, I kind of looked at them funny. Who are you to tell me what is wise in my life? It caused disunity, and this is exactly what Satan wanted. As we see in verse 16, he said, or 15, sorry, he says, this is not the wisdom that comes down from above, but is earthly, unspiritual, and demonic. It comes straight from Satan, guys. This isn't the wisdom that we should be having. In fact, this kind of wisdom causes what James says in the next verse. He says, for where jealousy and selfish ambition exist, there will be disorder and every vile practice. Disorder and every vile practice coming from wisdom, that doesn't sit right to me. It doesn't sit right that I wanted wisdom, and that's what it came from. So is that the end of it? Kind of a bad sermon if it was. James continues here, and I'm sure by now you guys realize that Benjamin Franklin didn't sell 10,000 books on demonic truths and wisdoms. No. James continues in verse 17. He says, but the wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, open to reason, full of mercy and good fruits, impartial and sincere, and a harvest of righteousness is sown, and peace by those who make peace. That's a much better peace for me, a much better wisdom for me, guys. And James tells us that the wisdom that James says here doesn't seem to be for our own benefit, which is a whole flip on the wisdom that we saw before. He says that it is first pure. It wants the best for everybody. It's open-minded. It seeks agreement. It's peaceable. It seeks to find the best opportunity for all people. It's gentle. It's gentle. It's not forcing itself upon others. It's working with others. It has mercy and good fruits. It doesn't seek to belittle somebody who doesn't seem to be as wise. It's impartial and sincere. Guys, it's real. This wisdom, it seeks to be not only right, but to be good. The next verse it says, and a harvest of righteousness is sown and peace by those who make peace. Now, one thing that might be helpful to know here is that the Jewish people were constantly thinking in their mind to revolt against the Roman Empire. And for James to tell them here that this wisdom brings peace, yikes, that's not what they wanted to hear. But I find it funny that wisdom and Jesus had the same goal. See, when Jesus came down as the Messiah, people thought that he was going to overthrow the empire, that he was going to throw the yoke off of the back of the Jewish people. That's not what he came to do. He came to create peace between us and God, and he accomplished that on the cross. He here not to build an earthly kingdom, but to build a heavenly one. And so, how can we incorporate this wisdom into our life? Well, for parents, imagine the example you could be setting by having a gentle and peaceful conversation when you are teaching and growing your kids' skills, right? Instead of getting frustrated when they don't get something, teach them through peace and mercy. As a student, imagine the impact you could have if your wisdom was open to reason, as we see here. What if it was impartial and sincere? That would help in so many ways. You would make a community that was centered around what is right and true instead of what you want to be right. Instead of arguing about, oh, I think this is it and you're wrong, it's, hey, maybe this could work and I'm seeing your opinion and maybe we could try both. As a worker, being good fruits and being pure and having good fruits, you would never cheat to try to get the upper hand. You would never try to push any coworkers down. In fact, you would never belittle a boss in this way. You would never create chaos, but you would make peace. And I would encourage you throughout this week to focus on ways that you can use this wisdom. And I want to leave us on one last thing. So the Jewish people, they wanted to overthrow an empire. And you know what? They might have been onto something there. You see, the empire that I'm talking about here is earthly wisdom. This wisdom, when it is peaceable and gentle and open to reason, imagine the impact that would have on the earth. Imagine that if other people saw that Christians were making good fruit, impartial and sincere, that they were pure in their wisdom, it's going to start turning heads. When they see that it is beneficial and when it is and when it creates righteousness by peace, people might start thinking that the Christians might be on something here. That when they see that our wisdom creates more opportunities than their wisdom is, it's gonna change some minds. So instead of trying to overthrow an empire, let us try to raise up a kingdom of God through wisdom that is looking to not belittle anybody, to not be right, but to be wise.